The New York Times article that wrote about the racial disparity in school suspensions. Okay? And we all suspected that this disparity existed, but we didn't.
No. What do you mean? Barack Obama was elected president. There's no racism left in the country. I'm sure that it's totally equal, right? Everybody gets suspended at the same rates. It must be, right?
It's equal all over the place except for middle schools. Middle schools is where equality does not exist.
Fascinating. Okay.
Okay, so just to give you a little more specifics about this, the Southern Poverty Law Center looked at 4 decades worth of data from the Department of Education.
Okay.
And what they found is that black male students, were 3 times more likely to get suspended than white students.
Okay, now, so to be fair, that's from 4 decades. So that's totally not surprising.
It's not surprising, except you would think that as time progresses, that number dwindles down a little bit.
Of course it does, right?
Of course it does not.
Oh, no! Okay, see, twists and turns. Okay, so what happened with the number?
Okay, so just to give you more information about it, Hispanics and American Indian students in middle schools were also more likely to become suspended, okay? But the only race that was not suspended more than whites were Asians. Asians were the least likely to be suspended.
That's interesting. Okay. So now look, is this partly due to racial stereotypes? Of course, right? And it goes to show you how powerful it is. Because when you tell kids from an early age, oh, you're the bad one, oh, you're suspended, you're this, you're that, that also seeps into them, right?
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that was another thing that was mentioned in this article that I found fascinating. Okay, one thing that they found was, and this is another recent study, 400 incarcerated high school freshmen in Baltimore found that 2/3 had been suspended at least once in middle school.
And I don't want to gloss over the fact that there are other factors, right? So if in an inner city, maybe there's in some schools not as much discipline based on how the teachers, the principals, administrators are running the place, and then they overcompensate by suspending everybody. That's kind of a lazy way of doing things, right? It could be that Asian students culturally, some of them, if they're recent immigrants, are taught to obey authority more. I'm not saying these aren't factors, they are. But, I mean, looking at those overwhelming numbers, you think people's stereotypes about race, even if it's a black principal in a black school or a Latino principal in a Latino school, that also is reality, right? You think it doesn't play a factor? Come on, it's overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. Another amazing stat in this study was that black girls were 4 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. 4 times more likely.
Come on. I mean, what's the argument? What, they had it coming? I mean, what's the counterpoint, right? Come on, right? So what we're trying to tell you here is, look, not everything is racist. Of course not, right? And just because there is racism doesn't mean that you say, okay, well, there's racism in middle school, so I give up. No, those are absurd straw man arguments. But at the same time, understand people's context. Sometimes it's hard when everybody assumes you're going to be a problem or you're this or you're that, and then you get suspended at a rate 4 times more than other people do. Can you see how that might create problems for you?
Yes.
All right? And then plus, then that follows you to high school, that follows you to, hey, if you're going to apply for college, as they used to say in school, that's on your permanent record. And I'm not sure if there is such a thing as a permanent record, but that does follow you, and it makes it harder to succeed later. There's so many downsides to it.
Right, and the reason why the Southern Poverty Law Center focused on suspensions rather than expulsions is because with suspensions, teachers and administrators can use their discretion. So they have a lot more flexibility when it comes to the reasons for suspending students. Whereas with expulsion, it's usually if a student brings a weapon or does something dangerous or violent in school.
Well, you see, that's also interesting, and that's part of the reason that they go to zero tolerance, and that's interesting too, because they're worried about stuff like this, that if you allow administrators to use their discretion, that they wind up using it in an unfortunate way, and it winds up with, in this case, racial disparities, perhaps in other ways, other kinds of disparities. It could be based on income levels, they discriminate against poor kids. It could happen, right? So that's why they go to zero tolerance, but I don't think that's the right answer. I think we need to find a much better balance.